Before we begin, take a deep breath and imagine this. Imagine working your entire life to build something small but meaningful. A home, a routine, a sense of pride. And then one night, without warning, it's all gone. Not because you failed, not because you were careless, but because life sometimes changes in a single moment. If stories about love, resilience, and second chances move you, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We share real human stories inspired by true events across America, stories that remind us we are stronger than we think. This is the story of Daniel and Emily. Daniel Harper grew up in a small town in western Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. His father left when he was 10. His mother worked 2 jobs until illness slowly took her strength. By 19, Daniel was already working full-time at an auto repair shop. Grease under his fingernails and responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He wasn't a man of big words. He believed in effort, in showing up early, in fixing what was broken. When his mother passed away, he inherited nothing but an old toolbox and a quiet determination to never depend on anyone again. By 32, Daniel had managed to buy a small 2-bedroom house at the edge of town. It wasn't fancy. The floors creaked, the paint peeled in places, but it was his. Every wall he repainted himself. Every cabinet he installed with careful precision. For Daniel, that house wasn't just shelter. It was proof he had survived. Emily Carter entered his life on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when her car broke down near the hospital, where she worked as a pediatric nurse. She walked into the repair shop stressed and running late, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, apology already forming on her lips. Daniel fixed her alternator faster than expected. She thanked him with a warm smile that lingered longer than necessary. He noticed the kindness in her eyes before he noticed anything else. Their relationship didn't explode into passion overnight. It grew steadily. Coffee after work, walks in the park, shared stories about difficult childhoods. Emily admired Daniel's quiet strength. Daniel admired Emily's ability to soften even the hardest days. 8 months later, on a cool October evening, Daniel locked up the shop and drove home, thinking about dinner plans. Emily had suggested cooking together. He was going to tease her about burning garlic bread the week before. But when he turned onto his street, red lights flashed against the dark sky. Smoke rolled upward like a storm cloud. Neighbors stood outside, faces pale in the glow of emergency vehicles. His house was on fire. For a moment, he didn't process it. He thought maybe it was the neighbor's place. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. But then he saw the roof collapse inward. Flames swallowed the windows he had installed himself. The front door he had sanded and repainted cracked. Under heat. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stood there, hollow. By the time firefighters controlled the blaze, nothing remained but blackened beams and wet ash. An electrical fault, they said. Old wiring behind the walls. No way to see it coming. Everything he owned was gone. Emily arrived breathless, still in her scrubs. She ran toward him and wrapped her arms around his rigid frame. He didn't respond at first. Then slowly, his shoulders dropped. That night he insisted he was fine. Said insurance would handle it. Said he'd figure something out. At 2 a.m., she found him sleeping upright in his truck, parked near the ruins. "You're coming home with me," she said gently. "It's not your problem," he replied. She looked at him steadily. "When you love someone, Their problems don't stay separate. That was the first crack in Daniel's armor. In the weeks that followed, pride became heavier than loss. Daniel struggled with accepting help. Friends from town organized a small fundraiser. His boss offered extra hours. Emily cleared space in her apartment and insisted he move in fully instead of pretending it was temporary. He hated feeling dependent. He grew quiet, distant, sometimes sharp with his words. One evening, after a long silence at dinner, he finally admitted what was really eating at him. "I built that house with my own hands," he said, voice low. "Now I can't even provide a place to live." Emily reached across the table. "You think I love you because of a house?" He didn't answer. "You are not your worst moment," she continued. "And you are not less of a man because something burned down. But healing isn't instant. Insurance delays dragged on for months. Temporary housing costs drained savings. Daniel worked longer hours, coming home exhausted and frustrated. Emily picked up extra hospital shifts. Then another blow came. The repair shop where Daniel worked announced it was closing. The owner was retiring, and a larger chain had bought the property. Employees would be replaced. In less than 6 months, Daniel had lost his home and his job. That night he broke. Not loudly, not violently. He simply sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, and said, "Maybe I'm just not meant to build anything that lasts." Emily knelt in front of him. "Then we build something together," she said. Together. That word changed everything. Instead of looking for another mechanic position in town, Daniel took a risk. With encouragement from Emily, he applied for a small business recovery grant offered by the state for displaced workers. He spent nights drafting a plan to open his own modest garage. He doubted every sentence he wrote. Emily edited the application after her shifts, falling asleep beside stacks of paperwork. Weeks passed. One afternoon, an email arrived. Grant approved. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to rent a small warehouse space and purchase essential equipment. Friends from town showed up to help renovate. Emily painted the office walls herself. On opening day, only 3 customers came. Daniel tried not to feel discouraged. By the 3rd month, word spread. Honest pricing, careful work, no shortcuts. Business grew steadily. Meanwhile, Daniel and Emily faced another unexpected challenge. Emily's father suffered a stroke in Ohio. She needed to relocate temporarily to help her mother. This time, distance tested them. Late-night phone calls replaced shared dinners. Stress returned. There were moments when exhaustion made them irritable, when silence lingered too long. But something had changed since the fire. They no longer saw hardship as an individual burden. They saw it as a shared opponent. After 6 months, Emily returned. Daniel's garage had doubled its monthly clients. He had hired 1 assistant. He stood taller, not because life was easy, but because he had survived the hardest parts. 1 year after the fire, Daniel took Emily to the empty lot where his house once stood. Grass had begun to grow through the charred soil. "I used to think losing this place meant I failed," he said quietly. "But if it hadn't happened, I'd still be playing it safe. I'd still be afraid to build something bigger." Emily squeezed his hand. "I don't need walls to feel secure," she said. "I just need you." 2 years later, they stood together again, this time on a different plot of land. A modest new home under construction, not built from fear of losing it. Built with acceptance that life is unpredictable. Daniel's garage became one of the most trusted small businesses in the county. Emily began leading community health workshops for families, struggling with crisis and loss. They started a small annual fundraiser for families displaced by house fires, remembering the strangers who once helped them. Their love wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was resilient. And resilience, they learned, doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means refusing to let pain define the ending. Daniel once believed strength meant never needing anyone. But the fire taught him something different. Strength is allowing someone to stand beside you when everything falls apart. Strength is rebuilding, even when you're scared it could burn again. Strength is choosing love, not because life is stable, but because it isn't. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that your hardest chapter doesn't have to be your final one, make sure you subscribe and share it with someone who needs hope today. Because sometimes losing everything is the beginning of building something even stronger.